How ominous is the debt limit problem? The U.S. government on Thursday ran up against its legal borrowing capacity of 31.381 trillion. U.S. nears debt ceiling, begins extraordinary measures to avoid default. Yellen says U.S. has hit debt limit, triggering extraordinary measures. Treasury launches extraordinary measures to delay debt limit. How extraordinary measures can postpone a debt limit disaster. Treasury taps retirement funds to avoid breaching U.S. debt limit. U.S. reaches debt limit amid slowdown and extraordinary measures. The U.S. could default on its debt by summer if Congress doesn't act. So it seems the doomsday clock on the debt limit is ticking. And my understanding is we'll be good until around June. And then after that, the Congress will have to either raise the debt limit or the U.S. goes into default. I know all the headlines sound pretty scary. So I found something that was actually kind of funny, making fun of the whole situation. And dear dummies, it's Jana over here at Treasury. Since many of you don't seem to know the difference between spending money and money you already spent, we're going to have to do some belt tightening around here until you all get your heads out of your keisters and raise the debt limit. I know nobody's going to like this, but you self-aggrandizing dipsticks have no one to blame but yourselves. Before I get to the extraordinary measures we'll have to take to keep the bills paid and the lights on, let me say one thing for the 12th millionth time. The debt ceiling is a thing that lets you pay off money we have already spent on things you all already approved. It has nothing to do with spending more money on more things. Switching over to the markets and the Fed, Jamie Dimon over at JP Morgan is saying, hey everybody, there's a lot of underlying inflation around, and he thinks rates are going to be above 5% and maybe stay elevated for some time. The Federal Reserve, essentially their committee members keep going out in public and saying, hey everyone, we're going to keep raising rates. However, right now they're signaling that the rate raising may be slowed, perhaps 25 basis points in February and then another 25 basis points after that. And then we'll see what happens. It all depends what inflation does. Remember, the Fed is going for a 2% target rate on inflation. I've read different reports. Some economists are saying, well, maybe they'll be happy with 3. Other ones are saying maybe happy with 2.5. Not that many people think it's going to be 2%. This is something that no one can tell, but we're going to see. Musk lied when he tweeted about Tesla takeover. Stakeholders attorney argues Tesla investor seeks billions in damages on behalf of those who traded stock after Musk posted plan to take company private. So switching over to the Elon Musk Tesla news, we already know about the trial that's going on right now. And the basic gist of it is like Elon is tweeting out that he's going to take Tesla private, funding secured. You guys know what I'm talking about. And essentially that ended up not being true, as well as now we're dealing with the 2016 FSD video. So basically Tesla put out a video that basically gave the illusion that the car was much more advanced than it is regarding its self-driving. And one of the issues is, how was the video made? It turns out that they essentially, the engineers 3D mapped the route that the car would go, and so then obviously then the car is not really full self-driving in the way that you and I, a regular person, would. And in the video, they're saying like the driver doesn't have to touch the steering wheel. They don't really say like, hey, we had a lot of problems with this thing. It's not really real world conditions. And what's going on right now, there is new evidence that Elon Musk was heavily involved with producing this video. And again, the issue is this false advertising? I want to look at what the email said. You guys can see this here. This is from Elon Musk in an email, and we're going to have a lot of evidence keep coming out. Just want to be absolutely clear that everyone's top priority is achieving an amazing autopilot demo drive. Again, we're talking about producing that video. Musk said in an email, since this is a demo, it is fine to hard code some of it, since we will backfill with production code later in an OTA update. So it's basically saying, hey, we can kind of cheat the system with hard code, and it's not really ready, but you can cut corners essentially. And then here's the rest. I will be telling the world that this is what the car, quote, will be able to do, not that it can do this upon receipt. And this is sort of an email that gives a look into Elon Musk's thinking, and there's going to be debate. So the fanboys and fangirls will say, well, just because they didn't reach their goals doesn't mean they were lying. But the problem is is that we know essentially that they're admitting here that, that the car can't do what we want to do, but we're kind of going to show what we think it might be able to do. The problem is like, again, it's the issue of false advertising. Did they lead people to believe that could actually do it? That's the question. Switching over to more Twitter thing regarding Musk, they're gonna have to make a payment. This is like 300 million they got to pay. Now with Twitter, they took a major debt. I think right now they might owe about 12.8 billion. It's in that range, and the interest payments on that are really expensive. And it seems that at the moment they have enough cash, but people aren't really sure if Twitter is going to be good for the cash going forward. And there's another rumor out that I guess they're going to fire yet more people over at Twitter. And this is always something to keep an eye on. Speaking of layoffs, Capital One is cutting 1,100 tech jobs. And the basic gist of it is some of these jobs essentially are not needed because we're more efficient. We have automation, we have robots, etc. And then some of these people in technical roles are also helping to bring about this automation. And I'm sure you guys heard about these kind of things. They're saying that the people who are laid off can look for different roles in the company at Capital One. And this is a quote from the company. They're saying, decisions that affect our associates, especially those that involve role eliminations, are incredibly difficult. This announcement is not a reflection of those individuals or the work they have driven on behalf of our technology organization. Their contributions have been critical to maturing our software delivery model and our overall tech transformation. And I want you guys to pay attention to the news when we see these kind of things. Like here, they use the language of tech transformation, but basically it's coming, right? Before in the past, it would be the factory floor where blue collar jobs were replaced with essentially robots, but now we're looking at white collar jobs in the office and many tech jobs. I'll just give you simple examples, say sales jobs, customer service, these kind of things. Now we have, AI, chat GPT, these kind of stuff that will be able to place those kind of jobs. Accounting jobs, sort of numbers jobs, those sort of stuff, those kind of jobs will be eliminated as well. And you just want to be prepared and be the kind of person that will be useful going into the future. And speaking of shifting direction, it seems that FTX might actually open up again, although, who knows if that's really going to happen. The headline's reading, new FTX chief says crypto exchange could restart, and this is according to John Ray. And remember, he's the one in charge of basically getting everyone's money back. Whether or not FTX opens again, who knows? My feeling is always the same on these things. I just don't know why anyone would want to take the risk. But I do understand there's lots of crypto boys and girls out there. And if you're into this stuff, be my guest. And then speaking of guests, Uber seems to be working with automakers to develop essentially an electric vehicle that's designed just for Uber. And this is actually interesting. I was thinking about this. It might end up being like a bus kind of system or the kind of thing that where it would only have doors that would work on one side. I'm just giving you guys some examples because essentially a regular passenger car isn't necessarily suited for taxi type of service. And this would actually be really interesting as well because they could talk about range. They could talk about, design cars that's just built for the city where like stop and go type of traffic. I do think, new types of vehicles are going to be the future. I myself do prefer to just either take an Uber, Lyft, rideshare, etc. Because given a choice, if I have to drive, then I gotta park, then I gotta clean my car, then I gotta maintain said car, gotta take the car to the shop, all that stuff, and it's just way more simpler for my life. That's just me. To let someone else drive me around, I just prefer that. Now, however, there are times like say a weekend, trip to the beach and stuff like that, where it's fun to drive yourself, but just your everyday stuff to the store or just a night out if I want to go out drinking, that kind of stuff. So I do think this is the future. And it'll be really interesting if Uber ends up partnering with a particular type of company to put these cars on the road. And if you don't like roads, there was an interesting article regarding air travel. The Wall Street Journal put out their best and worst airlines of 2022. I want to look at the rankings with you guys together. You can see this. You can pause the video and take a look at it for yourself. It's really interesting. So overall in 2022, Delta came in first. And this is a true story. My wife and I don't work for Delta or anything like that, but we like to fly with Delta. Given the choice, if you're going to say use an American airline to fly internationally, right? Usually the choice to say for US to Korea is like a Delta or United, if you're going to fly the American airlines. Now, the one thing that's interesting is Delta partners with Korea Air and other Korean carriers. So sometimes you actually get you may book your thing through Delta, but you're just flying, a regular Korean flight, which is interesting. So I'm not shocked that Delta's at the top of this list. At the bottom is JetBlue, Spirit, and Frontier. I would have guessed that Spirit and Frontier would have been below JetBlue, so that's kind of interesting. But you can see the criteria they have, like, how often are they on time, how often are they canceled, delayed, how to, just sitting on the tarmac, or they lose your baggage, this kind of stuff. So these are the kind of things. Looking at this here, this is interesting. When you look at the complaint area, so Southwest actually ranks first for complaints. That would mean that people don't complain, whereas Frontier is like last on this chart. And I'll be curious to your guys' thoughts on this thing. You can, like I said, you can pause the video and to share your thoughts. But usually for me, like I said, we fly Delta. I have no experience with Allegiant, so just no experience with it. I've never flown with them. Yeah, I've never flown with Spirit either. I think my understanding is Spirit has like bench seating or like plastic seating, and I think a lot of these ones are fine if you're probably going to just fly, half an hour flight. I'll say, however, I remember seeing it was like last year where people were just stranded, with Spirit, and I was like, well, I might save, we'll say $20 or $50 or whatever it's going to be, but if I have to sit in the airport for like 10 hours, there's just nothing worth it. It's interesting because even though Delta is the top one this year, you can look at the chart here. This is how the airlines have fared the last 3 years in terms of the Wall Street scores. Delta was top one last year as well in 2021, or the year before, I should say, not last year. And then Alaska has been at the top as well, and the same with Southwest. So those have sort of been the top three. And then I guess JetBlue, does something change where they kind of drop to the bottom? So like I said, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that. This is an interesting thing is something we've all talked about. I'm sure you guys know, if you ever fly internationally, the flights can be really long. And in fact, Qantas, they're trying a new thing from New York to New Zealand if you're going to fly that. It's a long flight. I think it's like 16 hours, and they're putting in bunk beds. This is a picture of them here. Now, there's a couple of thoughts I have on this. So one is, if you do put in bunk beds or this sort of thing, I think they'll be popular, and I wonder how many people will want to join the Mile High Club. And if you guys don't know what the Mile High Club is, look it up. It's basically people doing naughty things in the plane. I think that would be a thing, and I'd be curious your thought. That was the first thing that came to my mind. The other thing too that came to mind was like international travel would be much better, but this is not as good as it could be, because when you do this, you have to schedule a 4-hour block. So it's not that your seat is the bed. It's like you can go back there and I guess sleep for 4 hours and they just rotate. I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but that was a little bit of a disappointment. However, this one's really funny. If you want to just lay on your seat, they're actually selling beds. They're like calling these, like, I think they're calling them like the sky beds or something, or sky couch. I think that's what they called it. And basically, it's a mattress that goes across 3 seats. I have never seen something like this before, nor am I smart enough to like think about that the airlines would actually approve this kind of thing. I don't really understand the whole safety concerns on this, because like you would think that you would need to be able to put on a seatbelt, and like literally it looks like you're covering up the seatbelt. But this is a thing. It's pretty funny. So anyway, I do appreciate your time. Love to hear your thoughts on any one of these studios. And this has been your daily news.